Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. Today's video is about child training. So we're not talking about child discipline, and that is something that you need to discuss with your husband to see how you should do that in your household. I am in no way condoning abuse of children, and this is just talking about how to get your child to listen, obedience for your child. So I'm starting this video because I've had a couple people ask me about children around age 1 to 3, how to get them to listen and not just laugh when you ask them a command. So we're first going to talk about what the Bible says. I'm actually using a non-parenting passage to talk about how our response should be to our children. So I'm looking in James, and James 1, it says, "Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." That's what my version says. This is a ESV. Our children are perfect gifts from God. They're blessings. I'm not saying they're perfect, and that's why we're talking about obedience today, because the Bible tells us that children are supposed to obey their parents, and we are supposed to instruct them in the ways of God. So we're talking about this because our children are born with a sinful nature, and they do want to do their own thing. They're selfish, and they want what they want, just like us adults, but it looks different as toddlers. So we have to remember that these gifts, these blessings of children are from God, and He's given us instructions on how to teach them. So that was verse 16 and 17. Going on to 19. "Know this, my beloved brothers, and let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls." And it goes on to talk about being doers of the word, and if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. And so I was just considering this morning the way that I talk to my children and the way that I correct my children. We are supposed to be doing it in love, not in anger. And there are times where you do need to raise your voice. The average thing of, please, set down the toy isn't something you need to scream at your child about. There are times where you have to yell. You don't say, "Son, could you please get out of the road? There's a car coming." You say, "Come now," or "Stop now," depending on what the situation is. And that is an okay time to raise your voice and everything. But if we are always yelling at our children for every little misstep that they do, some of the things aren't even sin that they're doing that are uncomfortable for us, or things that are just annoying to us. So just really looking at your heart and what you're trying to correct. But what we were talking about, this young lady and I were talking about, was obedience of a 2 to 3 year old and how you get them to obey. So they need to know that mommy's word or daddy's word is something that needs to be listened to, and that they will be corrected if they don't do it. So how I do this, I hear one of the kids out there, they're watching a show. Daddy's gonna head out with them. So when you're talking to them, you need to expect that they understand what you're saying. And that means not using too many words. I know with my first little one, I over-talked to her. I would say, "Hey, let's clean up the living room because daddy's on his way home and we want to make it look really nice, and daddy's going to enjoy if it looks nice." Instead of saying, "Hey, could you help me pick up the books?" and giving a very concrete answer to a toddler's mind. Because toddlers understand. I know that each of my kids between about 9 and 13 months have gone through a stage where they understand the word no. My 12-month-old definitely understands the word no, and he'll occasionally do something that he knows is wrong, and he'll start crying before I even say no. Sorry, there's leaves falling out my window, like down next to my window. Keeps surprising me. He knows what I'm saying, like what I'm going to say before I even say it, if it's something he knows he's not supposed to be doing. And if I say the word no, he'll start crying before I've even removed him from the situation or anything. So there's definitely a time where kids know it. But if you say, "Please pick up," I'll show you an example in a minute, but if I say, "Please pick up the truck," and I've always referred to that toy as a car, and they don't have a comprehension of, oh, she's talking about this object, they can't find that object, you also need to know to not be upset at them that they're not understanding your terminology, because toddlers are still at a point of their growing in leaps and bounds in vocabulary. But we sometimes get angry when they are doing something that we see as a very simple task that they're not fully understanding what we're asking. So to practice obedience with my children, what I do is make sure that, so this is the practicing obedience. This isn't they're disobeying at another time during the day. My 1-year-old, he's almost 13 months, this morning was trying to climb from a stool onto the table. That's not allowed. He's never been on that stool before, and so I had to tell him, no, don't do that. But I'm talking about when we're sitting down and actually practicing, because if you practice, especially if you're just starting out, you have a child that is having a rebellious streak and you're trying to work on them with obedience, practice during the day when they're well fed and when they're well rested. Because as an adult, for me, I know that I can easily break down into tears if I'm overtired or really need to eat. So make sure that your child has what they need to have this be a fun learning experience, because this is what you're working on, is to make this enjoyable for them so that they can obey at a time when it's necessary later. We're practicing what is needed, because we have to remember that kids come into this world with a sinful nature and they need to be taught how we react in different situations. So how I would do it with my, let's say 18 months, we're gonna go with an 18-month-old, is I would say, I would like you to please go pick up this thing. So I've got some objects over here. And so I would say, okay, I'm gonna use Malachi because he's my littlest right now. He's not quite this age, but Malachi, I'd like you to walk over to the bed and pick up the phone. And Malachi continues to sit on the floor. What I would do is I would take Malachi and I would I would stand him up, because we're talking about 18-month-old, walk him over to the bed, use his hands with my hands, and pick up the phone, and walk back to where mommy was and hand it to me. And then I'd say, yay, Malachi, good job. Thank you for doing that. Don't put too many items out. 2 to 3 items, so you can tell them something to grab. But if you put a whole array of things, it's going to be overwhelming to them. So I would say, yay, good job. If I ask for the next thing, let's say, okay, can you please go get me the wipes? Make sure you're using the words they already know you call that item. And if he gets up and gets it and brings it to me, yay, Malachi, good job obeying mommy. You're doing what's right. Good job listening. If he doesn't, you again stand up from what you're doing and walk over with them. Pick the item up and bring it back. Show them what you are expecting them to do. This isn't going to work out great the first time. I mean, it may. It'd be great if it worked out the first time, but it's not always going to work out great the first time. But having these training sessions every day are really going to show them what you expect from them when you ask them to do an activity. If it's not working, make sure that you make them obey every command you give them. But if I tried that with 2 or 3 items and Malachi is not working with this, I would still go over and get the item and bring it back. But have your training session be something that they're still understanding, they're still enjoying. If it's not working, maybe they're not feeling good. Maybe they are tired. You thought they had slept well and they hadn't. But make sure that if you say, go get me the wipes, take them over to get the wipes and bring them back. But you can stop that at any point. Maybe you're going to do 2 commands, maybe you're going to do 10 commands. There's also a very important part of this with consistency. And as you have a child who obeys, sometimes you get a little slack on making sure that they're consistent, but especially if you're working with your child for the first time, you really need to put down an item and go do this with the child. Make sure that the child obeys, that the child understands, and give them tons of praise. But I think we're very slack. I don't have my phone with me, but I think we're very slack. I'll take this one. We can be sitting there. We can be like, please go get a diaper. No, go get a diaper. I told you to get a diaper. And continue yelling at them about the command instead of going over, making them do it, and coming back. And when I say making them do it, I'm not saying do it in a very forceful way to be angry at them or anything like that. I'm saying to make sure that they actually do the task that mommy has asked them to do. There's also a time when, with little ones, we sometimes expect a lot. Some little ones can pick up an entire basket of toys that they've taken out on the ground. Sometimes that's a little overwhelming. So mommy getting down on the floor and helping pick up blocks, hey, let's pick up blocks together. You start over there and I'll start here, and start picking up blocks can eliminate some of those breakdowns. So I would suggest that when you're doing this, make sure your attitude is good going into this. Pray that God would help you to see your child as the beautiful blessing that he's given you, but also that he's giving you a time to show this child how to react to the world around them, how to obey the authorities over them, and also how to eventually obey God through this obedience that they're learning here. There are times when you need to stop your child from doing something right away. Like my child who was trying to climb on the table this morning. I needed to take him out of off the stool, that like he was standing on something I was allowing him to be on. But when he was getting on the table, I had to take him down to make sure he was safe. There are other times where it's not that immediate, and you remove the child from the situation, or you take the toy that they're not listening with or whatever. And sometimes it's important to pause and take a time to pray before you go to that child, instead of going to them and correcting in anger, correcting them with the right attitude. And as a parent, I'm not saying that you need to apologize to your child all the time, but I know that there are times that I've had to apologize to my kids because they were doing something wrong, and you can admit their wrongdoing even while admitting that you were wrong in responding. When you hit your brother, I was very angry when I was correcting you, and I need to be careful of what my attitude is. That was not a right way, because your reaction to their behavior is also teaching them a new behavior. And God has asked us to, has commanded us to love our children. And if we're always focusing on the correction when we're in anger, we're not doing the thing that God has asked us to do. God is a very loving God. He's also angry with the wicked every day. So I'm not saying that there's not righteous anger there, but there are a lot of times that we get angry at our children and correct them in a state that we are not showing them the love of Christ, and we are not pointing them to how they should react as a Christian, that we eventually are hoping that they will understand the goodness of God and the saving grace of Jesus. But making sure that we are teaching them through our correction also, through our attitudes. So I hope you enjoyed this video today. Thank you for joining us on Herding Little Cows, and I hope this helps someone with little ones. Thanks for joining us.